Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ability Bridge podcast. We love our children. Nothing comes close to that. With all our children with diverse needs, attending school can create really significant and often urgent challenges, and it isn't very easy at all to properly support them as parents and educators. And that's why we have the Ability Bridge podcast. We guide teachers and parents of SEND students with the support and resources that they need so that every kid thrives. In today's episode, we're talking about the quite potentially prickly subject of the relationship between home and school. As always, Lynn and I are both here. How are you doing, Lynn?
I'm all right. Yes, it's been busy this week, doing lots of training and being in schools and speaking to parents. Yeah, it's good. I love my job, but it can be intense at times.
Can be intense, and there's a lot of emotion involved in it. You know, everything's quite personal, isn't it, a lot of the time? And I think, first of all, we just want to say we most definitely do not have all the answers, and we are on everybody's side. You know, as I'm speaking as a parent, and you know, we go from feeling confident about what we know, and is best for our children, to feeling lost and desperate in the same day, potentially, because something just pops up. You know, neither of us are sitting here claiming to have all the answers. We do have some stuff that we know works, but we don't have all the answers, do we, Lynn?
No, definitely not. We've just had a bit of experience, I think, between us that we want to share, don't we? And we've got that heart to try and bring people together. And I think that's what we're trying to do with schools. So as a middle person, in a way, as an outside professional going into schools these days, I'm able to kind of build a bridge. The Ability Bridge, there we are.
There it is.
Between parents and teachers wherever I can. And I think both sets of people, because it's not about sides, it sounds like battle then, doesn't it? There's enough of that going on in the education system. But yeah, both sets of people can appreciate that, just coming together and facilitating that. And on the other side, I see a lot of, really good practice in schools, and I want to share that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to celebrate, and we're very much about focusing on the good. We're inevitably going to have some comparisons against what doesn't work so well, you know, but we really do want to focus on the good and encourage everybody to be doing as much positive stuff as possible, as much positive talk as possible. Lynn, you have an analogy to share with us, I believe.
Yeah, I was really thinking about that this week, and I quite often use a Coke bottle, an analogy, for when I'm thinking about the difference between a child at school and at home, especially for those who mask. So the Coke bottle, if you're shaking it up throughout the day, you can keep the lid on, but as soon as you take the lid off, we know that it goes everywhere. So if that's a child at school, and the things that are making them stressed throughout the school day are like that shaking up of the Coke bottle. And often we can find children can keep the lid on just about at school, sometimes not, but often when they do, it means that as soon as they get to their safe place at home, then the lid can come off, and that can be straight out of the school gate. And what I've noticed that, I'm being honest, and in my own teaching career a long time ago, I would have thought exactly the same. If a child comes out of your class and they've been good for you all day, they see their parent and they start like exploding, your immediate jump is to think, do you know what? Their parenting is awful. You know, that they're not obviously as good as me as a teacher, because they were fine with me, and look at them with their parent there, they're running rings around them. But that Coke bottle really made me think about that shaking up that we haven't seen is our perspective. But from the parent's perspective, they're picking the child up from school, and as soon as they see the child, it's a safe place for the child to explode with all the stress. So all we're seeing is the parent seeing the child's in a mess because they're really stressed, and they're trying to deal with that in a packed playground full of other people. They're embarrassed. They don't know why that's happened. They're obviously thinking, well, they've just come out of school, so it must be something that's happened at school. And so you're getting two sides of the coin that are completely different perspectives, but actually they're really connected. It's the same child, the same Coke bottle, the same stresses. And I just thought that's quite a useful story to think about. You know, we're too quick to judge. really. It must be the parents, or it must be, the way that, although they're obviously not as structured as us at home. I have to be honest, I hear that from teachers, and I'm really honest and say that I've thought that myself in the past. But actually, I'm really learning that if we come together and listen to each other, actually we can start to reduce that stress, like opening the Coke bottle lid a bit, going ksh, 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 letting some of the pressure out, so that we can give the child to their parent at the end of the day in a much better regulated state, really. So I've been thinking about that a lot this week.
Yeah, and as a parent, that is very much our lived experience. Every part of that, from how children come out of school, we often talk about it as the duck, calm on the surface, pedaling so hard. So for our youngest, Aaron, just walking into school, navigating the social situations before he even gets into the door of school is very high pressure for him. It's absolutely exhausting for him. He went to his friend's house to play for just an hour for the first time without one of us there. It's the first time we've ever done that, and that was last week. And he had an amazing time. Boy, did he crash afterwards, because he loved it. He had an amazing time, but he completely crashed afterwards because it takes so much of his energy and his emotional energy to get through something like that, even though he absolutely loves it. So if he's not loving something, how much more so, So we're going to just chat a little bit, and we're going to try and keep this brief, aren't we? But we're going to be gearing up to another workshop, which of course is available to all members. We're going to be doing that on the 17th of November, and it's going to be lots of talk around, lots of strategies around how we can support the relationship between home and school to be the best it can possibly be. And I think, Lynn, I have a feeling we'll do that semi-regularly, because it's a very moving puzzle picture, as it were, but also it's something that we're going to keep needing to chat about. It's probably one of the most critical things that everything else kind of flows out of. What, from your point of view, Lynn, what can teachers do to work with parents?
Yeah, I've kind of put 5 quick top tips together, because I'd really like to expand on some of these during a full workshop. So I'm thinking, first of all, it's about listening, and listening non-judgmentally, to really understand what it's like for parents and the home life. You need to listen and kind of not jump in with, you think, oh, well, you should be doing this or you should be doing that, but actually just try and think about the whole experience. Especially if a child's got special education needs, then actually the parents have had this journey through school and education for many years, and they're weary, they're tired, and so just listening non-judgmentally is my first thing, really.
That's great.
Yeah. Secondly is actually communicate the positives. I've been talking to trainee teachers today, actually, and one of the things I really wanted to leave them with try and get in touch with parents and tell them something good the child has done in your lesson. I said, you can't imagine how much that will mean to parents. And it can be ridiculously euphoric for parents when all they hear is negatives in other situations. You know that, don't you?
I do. Yes, you do. Yesterday we got a video sent by email of Aaron playing a game in the playground with his friends, and it was just awesome. And I'm comparing to a previous experience where literally the only time we saw the teacher was when there was a problem. We only ever saw the TA, and I just, it's transformative, that as an approach, and so simple.
Yeah. So the third thing is around communicating difficulties that the child may be having, or incidents that are happening, but doing that very objectively. I think, again, it's very easy to load it with and a kind of secret message that your child's a bother and a burden to me and us and the class, is impacting on other children. But actually, if there's things happening, parents do want to know, that's what they say, but to be very objective and kind when you're talking about it.
Absolutely.
The next one is learn together with parents and from parents, because they know their children really well. They often know a lot about the child's condition more than you do. They'll be on different parts of the journey, but learn together. So pick up little bits of tips and hints and ask parents what they do they know about it. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I know you do that, which is great. And the final thing is, do what you say you will do. That's really important. And I would say then only say what you can do. So have a phrase maybe to say, actually, I'm not sure what I can do about that, rather than promise and overpromise, because parents will need to know what you're going to do. And I always say it's better to do one thing really well and consistently rather than many things inconsistently, because that just really messes things around. So there's a lot there, isn't there, really? 5 short tips.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into.
On it. Yeah, we'll dig into it.
We will expand on it. Absolutely. Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you, Lynn.
Well, I'm going to ask you the same question. And really from that parent point of view, what do you think parents can do to work well with teachers and the school?
So I think it's what my first thing I really want to say, and I it's really hard to communicate some of this because I don't want to sound like, teachers aren't tired, but because I could never do what you do in school. That's for sure. But as a parent, Nicole, my wife, and I, we have spent 10 years being hypervigilant all day and all night, every day. We are, when he's in school, we're waiting for a phone call. When he's in bed, we wonder if he's going to get up because, and is there, did we put the knives away? Did we lock the front door? Did we close all the windows? And you spend your whole life in that mode to the point where you don't know how to stop. And I think I just want to say that's what the reality is like. And forgive us when that spills over into frustration if we don't handle things particularly well, because we're really, really exhausted all the time. For us, we had years of Aaron getting up 10 or 15 times a night because he was struggling to, it was like a little bit of an attachment thing because he was in hospital for a few days. But there can be all sorts of causes for all sorts of things. And an appreciation of that is hugely valued by us. So that's a definite. I think, again, this is, forgive me, it's hard to say, but don't assume we trust you, because if our children have been in your school for 3 or 4 years, what's invariably happened is we've felt like we're starting again every year, where there has definitely been a journey and there is huge progress made if things are going pretty well. But very often it's a new teacher who, well, obviously it's a new teacher every year, but they don't know our child like it took months for the previous teacher to get to know him. And that's fine. That's just the way it's going to be. But every time we kind of need to build the relationship and establish patterns of trust. And I guess just one, might sound slightly strange, but tangible example of that certainly I have is Aaron we still need a communication book. So if he's had a rough night, we'll just send, because we obviously, we can't actually go and have a conversation at the beginning and end of every day, but we can just write a couple of sentences that said, he's had a really good night's sleep tonight. Don't know how that happened. He's really excited to come in. He's full of beans. Or he's had a really bad night's sleep. He's full of cold. Probably best to go easy today. And just those little things make a huge difference. And then, the same kind of notes coming home that just give us a bit of insight into where he's at, because he can't tell us much about his day. But then next year, how do we between us figure out making sure that the communication book happens again if it needs to. Because what we found, and I'm certainly not pushing fault on school here, because we chatted about it and went, well, we could do some stuff about this. We could actually initiate a conversation where, excuse me, every year we're assuming that a communication book will come home, but it doesn't. We have to ask every year. So in our heads, we think, well, why don't you just give us a communication book every year instead of assuming he doesn't need one anymore? Where school may well be thinking, well, they'll let us know if he needs a communication book, or it's just not been communicated or something. And I think that's a good example of what lots of things are like, where if we communicate just a little bit better, we'll all know what our expectations are and be ahead of things. And that's my biggie. That's my big biggie is about communication and feeling safe enough and comfortable enough to have an honest and frank conversation as people who ultimately are all around the child or want the best for the child. An example which is current is this week is, without going into any details of it, there is I hate the word, there is a behavior that has popped up. And yesterday at school pickup, both Nicole and I were there. Aaron came out and teacher was really positive. He's had a great day, lots of positive to say. Nick, can I just have a quick word? And Aaron and I went off to get in the car, and there is a thing to discuss, but there was no discussing around Aaron. Now I'm comparing that to our other experience of a similar situation a couple of years ago, where the teacher came out of the classroom and said the problem loudly in the playground in front of Aaron and all his peers and all his peers' parents. And you can imagine the ground, us wanting the ground to completely swallow us up at that moment. And you will not get a good reaction from me if that's how you do it. I can't, and I don't think you can reasonably expect a good reaction from me as a parent, because my emotions will be flaring up anyway, because all the trauma and all the stresses and all the anxiety around what Aaron's future looks like bubble up to the surface in that moment. And if you just manage it just a little bit better, it makes a massive difference to how we together look at that scenario. And that all comes under the communication umbrella, Lynn, doesn't it?
It does. I think we're going to delve a lot into communication because, again, teachers are overwhelmed by communication. They have 30 children in a class. There may be a number of parents that they need to speak to, and the timing of it and the structure of it. And there are also parents who struggle to communicate with school as well, or communicate aggressively because it has just all bubbled up. So actually understanding each other's viewpoint can be really helpful, can't it? And finding some way of structuring your communication that works for you all. I think as well, sometimes, schools are seen as the place where everything can get fixed and sorted, and the media does it. Schools should be teaching this and schools should be sorting that out. Schools are now doing so much social work and all those kind of things that the pressure on teachers is massive. But it doesn't mean that we can't do some really good basic communication together right at the very beginning and make that more smooth. I'm really looking forward to this, picking it more and learning together from teachers and parents and see if we can heal a little bit of that rift that sometimes comes between us.
I'm desperate to do that. I think it's why it's the whole point of why we're doing what we're doing is because I think it makes such a massive difference. Lynn, you and I have talked before about something that we did with school here. And it was, it was funny because they literally went, "What?" Nobody's ever said this before, where we went into end of year kind of chat. And I said, is there anything that we can do better to support our relationship and make our relationship as good as it can be? And I think as parents, we need to do that. I think as teachers need to do that. And what I'd love us to try and achieve as part of the workshop and our ongoing chats and plans and resources and training is how can we put really good strategies in place that do things like that, that say you're safe to have an open conversation, get your grumbles and your grievances aired in a way that's respectful and kind, but they're not just kind of bottled up, but they're still being said. And I think that's needs to be done in both directions. It's not just, well, the parents are the ones that get to vent. I think, like you say, it's absolutely, that's a two-way street.
It's going to be a good one, isn't it? I hope. And we're really looking forward to the people joining us. We can find loads and loads of spaces where there's, people complaining and quite rightly so, because there's some awful things that happen. But we want to create a space where we can say, well, how do we move forward from that? How do we manage and support you all together, and perhaps speak into that whole big situation? It's huge, isn't it? With something that comes from our hearts and our experiences, really.
Yeah, and so much so, Lynn and I haven't talked about this, so Lynn can go, no, we're not doing that. But what this could be funny is in this workshop, what I'd love us to do is say, if there's a teacher that's if you're a member, you're going to be able to access this workshop anyway. If there's a teacher that books onto this session, we would love you to be able to invite parents as well at no additional cost to that. This is very much open. We want as many people in the room to be able to share. We're not going to have neither of us are trained therapists. It's not going to turn into a counselling session, but we're going to talk about strategies and we're going to talk about ideas. So we'd love you to bring your ideas.
I think that's a great idea. I've done that on my courses before now, where we've invited parents and teachers together, and it's just wonderful to share that training together so they can talk about the child together. Oh yeah, I'm very excited. That's a great idea. There you go.
That'd be awesome. That's awesome.
I'm not going to shout at you.
Yeah, please don't. So we've taken up enough of everybody's time for today. I hope there's been a helpful introduction just to get things started on this conversation. We very much hope you can join us. We're looking at the 17th of November. It's going to be in the afternoon, and it will be a starting point of a conversation. But Lynn, thank you so much as always for joining me. We're on a journey together. Don't forget, folks, that as members, starting from just £12 a month, you can get access to all our resources, all our courses, all workshops, everything that we do. So check out theabilitybridge.com. But thank you for joining us today. Any final thoughts, Lynn?
No, just come along and join the conversation with us, and let's see if we can do something positive for everybody.
Great. Thank you for joining us today.